As mentioned in my last video, it was not the end of PowerPlay. So with the new year come new balance changes, which ultimately result in a buff, but it's a bit more complicated than that. For this rebalance, I tried to shift my perspective a little, from nerfing PowerPlay to instead buffing certain playstyles against it. PowerPlay itself is more rich in mechanics as a result, and let me start off by saying that you don't really need to know any of this, they are supposed to just feel natural. Nevertheless, in this video I'll go into some details on what's been removed, what stayed, and all the new stuff. First though, let me thank all the people who participated in playtesting. It's great being able to verify updates against actual players instead of bots for a change. And if you want to help out test the new stuff as well, check out the Discord server in the description where all the events are managed. I'm also happy to see the perk suggestion forum has grown quite a bit, and I really can't wait to finish all the rewrites to start implementing them. One of my oldest goals was to reach 100 unique perks with the new RTD, and now we're just gonna go well beyond that. I'll be happy to see your idea in there as well. Back on the topic of PowerPlay, vaccinator resistances and increased knockback have been removed. The resistances haven't really been adding much anymore, they were effectively just visual at this point, and to be honest were a bit noisy. The knockback is still there, but to a much lesser extent. It's been completely re-implemented from the ground up. Other than that, most of the implementation stayed the same. You have a melee with full crits, increased speed, damage and air blast resistance, and you lose friction for a bit when you swing, which makes controls harder. However, now you have a chance to regain control instantly if your hit actually lands. This means there is no penalty as long as you keep the attack chain going. With knockback, as mentioned, it has received a complete makeover. Let's assume we start with 0% knockback, so fully resistant. And with that in mind, let's go over all the different things that happen when we receive damage. For bullet damage, we receive 50% knockback, so we're half resistant. This of course still doesn't apply to sentry gun bullets, we are fully resistant to those. As for explosions, we get 25% knockback. But those also have a chance to launch us off ground, making controls more difficult. This won't happen more often than once per 2 seconds, so you don't have to worry about spam. No additional knockback from flames, but they slow you down instead. And even more so if they are crits. This does not apply to Afterburn. But speaking of status effects, Bleed and Afterburn now deal at least 1 damage. PowerPlay damage absorption is so high that they used to do literally nothing. Now, something a bit different. If you're ballsy enough to melee a PowerPlay user, you get to steal some of the effects. If you're not dead, you get full crits, a speed boost and 60% crit resistance. This effect lasts for 3 seconds and is only active for your melee weapon. If you switch away early, it's gone. So what's the use? Well, melee crits versus PowerPlay are very unique. They deal a whopping 500% knockback, which guarantees to launch the opponent back. Remember the crit resistance you got? You are encouraged to meet the PowerPlay user on their own ground and shut them down if you manage to get a 2-hit melee combo on them. Non-melee crits themselves are special as well. They add 50% knockback to the respective damage type, making bullets deal 100% knockback and 75% for explosions. Crits of any kind also have a hugely boosted damage versus PowerPlay, at least in comparison to regular attacks. As for backstabs, they do a flat 24 damage, which is the same as your average melee crit now. And yes, they do count as melee crits. There's one more thing which is based on the damage received, and that is the slowdown. It only activates when you take more than 50 points of original damage, and applies a slowdown for a duration in a gradual way until it caps at 3 seconds at 140 damage. This means that, for example, a 60 damage pellet shot slows you down for 0.3 of a second, a direct 90 damage rocket for 1.3 seconds, and a 150 damage headshot for 3 seconds. Going back briefly to status effects, Jarate and Mud Milk also apply a slowdown, however their duration is significantly reduced. Still, this gives an extra use to support mechanics. Okay, that's about it for what happens on damage, but we're not done just yet. Let's end on discussing class-specific changes where PowerPlay behaves a bit differently. On Scout, his mobility and lower melee damage make it so that you don't lose friction when swinging. This means that you don't have to worry about actually landing your hits as much as the other classes. However, this comes at a cost. This light class receives 20% more knockback from all sources. For example, this makes bullets deal 60% knockback, or crit rockets deal 90%. Soldier, on the other hand, gets additional 20% knockback resistance. Remember that explosions may launch us off ground? This resistance is enough to prevent it from happening on this class. Demoman also gets some knockback resistance, but not enough to save himself against explosions. Heavy's additional knockback resistance is 40%, and like Soldier, stays firm on the ground when taking explosive damage. Lastly, we have Spy, or if you're playing randomizer, any class which has the knife. The thing about the knife is that it kinda sucks, even if crit boosted, so I opted into something else instead. If you butter knife someone, they get stunned for 1 second, allowing you to circle around for an easy backstab. This plays into Spy's melee skill like we see in Meet the Spy, and gives the knife a bit more depth than just swinging it until the opponent dies. Talking about knives, the Spy-cicle gives you full fire immunity, which also prevents it from melting. But this is at the cost of additional slowdown when hit by flames. And that about wraps it up. Thank you for staying and checking out the new changes. The 2.5 update, besides PowerPlay, mainly focused on finalizing a lot of requests from the community. One such request was for allowing use of legacy effects, which all rebalance perks can now be configured for. If you're interested in how to do it, check out the changelog for more information. Imposing the rebalances was wrong of me, and there should have been an option to keep things the way they are. However, I firmly believe that legacy effects have no place in objective-based game modes, and I encourage you to configure RTD on a per-server basis. And on that note, Happy New Year, and see you in the next update!